One of the most memorable story arcs from Star Wars Andor was the first season's Narkina 5 arc, which gave the audience a terrifying glimpse of what prison could be like in a galaxy with advanced technology under a government with no morals or oversight. But Andor wasn't the first time Star Wars has shown us a nightmare-fueled prison. There were many such places in the galaxy, from Republic space to the corporate sector. Some of these prisons were worse than others, however, and in this video, we'll be taking a look at the galaxy's most infamous prisons and ranking them from okay to hellish. Before we get into things, we're going to take a quick look at a bunch of less remarkable prisons to establish a baseline for what these places were like in the Star Wars universe. During the time of the Republic, most Republic-managed prisons were fairly humane and they were scattered across the galaxy. These included the Greyland Security Complex on Tentator, the Ord Vaxel Prison, and the planet Delrian, which hosted prisons from the time of the Republic to the time of the New Republic. The Republic also made use of penal colonies, essentially entire planets that served as prisons. During the Republic era, typical penal colonies included Jubilar and Corvus, which were unpleasant but livable worlds. Some systems maintained their own penal colonies that were less hospitable than your standard Republic penal colony. These included Manforgan, where the noble houses of the Senex and Juvex sectors dumped undesirables, and Ronica, where the rulers of the Empress Teta system sent convicts to do hard labor terraforming the planet. The Empire, of course, established many more prisons to further its repression of the galaxy, and conditions in prisons declined under its reign. Under the Empire, slavery as punishment for a crime was enshrined in law, and so many criminals and dissidents became slaves, working to death on remote penal colonies. There were a few less extreme Imperial prisons, among them the prisons of Gol Hadar III, the Selnesh Imperial Detention Center, the fully automated orbital prisons of Baelis Bar, and the orbital labor camps above Ryloon in the Imperial Remnant. But many other Imperial colonies were more or less planet-sized slave labor camps, among them Vizcara, Tol Addo, Mach 9, Gesaril, Garan 4, and Bnach, the latter of which had an especially high mortality rate. Political prisoners were kept at high security prisons on Odic II, Orinakra, and Akrita, among others. The Rebel Alliance had a prison on Delis 4, and the New Republic continued to make use of penal colonies, although its prisons were much less harsh than the Empire's were. In canon, the New Republic had a penal colony at a scrapyard on Carthon, while in Legends, the New Republic had penal colonies on Boken, Fodorant, and Tamazal. We don't have enough information about any of these prisons to rank them properly, so consider these honorable mentions. With those out of the way, let's move on to the main event, the most notorious prisons in the galaxy. We're going to start with the prisons that were notorious but relatively tolerable and humane compared to the others, beginning with the prison planet Kifex. Kifex was the twin planet of Kifu, the homeworld of Kifar, who you might know as Quinlan Voss's species. The Kifar maintained the prisons of Kifex for the Republic since the 3000s BBY, giving them a reputation for high security. Many of the Republic's worst criminals wound up on Kifex, and most of those sent to the colony never left. But apart from that, Kifex wasn't all that bad. The Kifu treated their prisoners relatively humanely. Conditions on Kifex changed dramatically, however, in 30 BBY, when the insane Anzati Dark Jedi Volf Kako was accidentally released from containment. Kako took control of the planet and began feeding on the prisoners, and he was only stopped by the intervention of the Jedi. During the Galactic Wars, a slightly less tolerable Republic prison was located just a few sectors away on the planet Belsavis. The Belsavis prison was a secretive, high-security installation where the Republic imprisoned the worst of the worst, from insurgents and violent political prisoners to Mandalorians and Sith Lords. The prison was divided into 3 official sections. The minimum security section housed pirates, terrorists, crime lords, and other violent and powerful offenders, and despite its name, it was only low security by Belsava's standards, and its security was tighter than many dedicated high security prisons elsewhere. Depending on how dangerous they were, prisoners here were either kept in ordinary containment cells or frozen in carbonite. The high security section housed more of the same but with tighter security, and with prisoners separated into different sections according to their species. These species-specific sections had different artificial atmospheres tailored to match the homeworlds of the species housed there. Then there was the maximum security section, where prisoners were watched extremely closely and kept under heavy guard. There was also a 4th part of Belsava's prison that wasn't listed on official records, known as the Tomb. This was actually an ancient Rakatan prison that the Republic had discovered on Belsavas, and the Republic was able to keep staffing it with the prison's original Rakatan warden droids. In the Tomb, the most dangerous prisoners of all were imprisoned using the technology of the Infinite Empire, which rendered this part of the prison completely inescapable for those interned there, who included Sith Lords and the galaxy's worst war criminals. While Belsava's prison was pretty humane for the most part, the Tomb pushed the envelope a little, but that was deemed necessary in order to contain the likes of the Sith. Our last prison for this section was the Spire on Stygian Prime, which in canon was one of the most heavily fortified prisons in the galaxy. This secretive facility was designed to be completely impregnable, and it was meant to hold dangerous prisoners whose associates could be expected to attempt to rescue them. But while the Spire's defenses were numerous and top of the line, its actual prison facilities weren't all that extraordinary. They were just very secure. The Spire gets placed a little higher than our other prisons because, during the time of the Empire, the Inquisitorius used the preserved corpse of Luminara Unduli to lure Jedi into the facility to be captured, which goes a little beyond ordinary prison standards. Prior to its time as an Imperial facility, the Spire was operated by the CIS during the Clone Wars, and it was deemed secure enough that Darth Maul was imprisoned there after Darth Sidious captured him on Mandalore. The next few prisons were much more unpleasant, but not quite as hellish as some of the others. The first of these was Desolation Alley on the asteroid moon Uvu 4, another Republic facility. This was another of the Republic's most high security prisons, located on an airless rock above an obscure gas giant. Desolation Alley was extremely high security, equipped with gunships for patrol and defense. Its most dangerous prisoners were placed in solitary confinement in underground vaults, where they were kept under tight security. The guards down there walked around unarmed, but this was because they had been trained to be able to kill with their bare hands. If prisoners resisted in Desolation Alley, it could quickly become fatal, which earns this prison a ranking as unpleasant. Next up, we have the Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center on Coruscant, which you might remember from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. This place wasn't as potentially lethal as Desolation Alley, and it didn't appear to be as high security as some of the other prisons we've mentioned. The reason it ends up so high on this list is because it was a panopticon. All the cells were built into the walls of a massive chamber with a guard post in the middle where the guards could theoretically see everything the prisoners were doing. In practice, the guards would never be able to monitor every prisoner at once, but because they could always be watching, prisoners would essentially police themselves. This prison affords prisoners no privacy whatsoever and involves what is often criticized as an inhumane level of social engineering. In the real world, the idea of panopticon has sometimes been called the foundational concept of totalitarianism. Fitting, given how the Republic evolved during the period this prison was in use. At the top of the unpleasant tier, we have our last Republic prison, the Citadel on Lola Seiyu, also from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Although this facility was under Separatist control during the Clone Wars, it was originally built by the Republic, designed to be able to hold fallen Jedi. Under the Republic, the prison was fairly humane, if all but impregnable. It was designed to be especially difficult to escape, with many features that could counteract the force abilities of Dark Jedi. Under Separatist control, however, conditions at the Citadel worsened. The Separatists' warden, Osai Sobek, had his Jedi prisoners tortured in an attempt to break them, and he installed new security measures, which included using Anubas to hunt down and maul any escapees. Under Sobek, the Citadel went from a place meant to contain Dark Jedi to one meant to convert Jedi into Dark Jedi, a place where inmates would be tortured until they broke. It wasn't a place where anyone, Jedi or otherwise, would want to end up, but relative to other prisons that were like this, the Citadel was actually relatively tame. Moving on, it's time to get into the truly hellish prisons, beginning with Cog Hive 7. Built circa 38 BBY, with funding from the Intergalactic Banking Clan, Cog Hive 7 was located in the Outer Rim and not affiliated with the Republic. It's unclear where the prisoners at Cog Hive 7 came from, although they were all dangerous and often violent, but what is known is that the prison was actually under the control of criminal elements that used the prison for profit. Cog Hive 7 was a space station designed with fluid internal architecture, which could be quickly reconfigured to confuse and contain escaped inmates. Conditions within the prison were rough and escape was impossible, but that's not what made Cog Hive 7 hellish. That owes to the fact that inmates were regularly made to fight to the death. On top of its ordinary prison facilities, Cog Hive 7 contained a gladiatorial arena, and twice every day, the prison's owners would force two inmates to fight each other to the death there. These death matches were the main function of Cog Hive 7, as the owners made their money back by taking bets on the fights. They had an algorithm that was able to perfectly predict who would win, allowing the owners to place winning bets every time. This made Cog Hive 7 quite lucrative, if also extraordinarily inhumane. Those who were sent there tended not to last long, and those that did had to fight for their lives on a regular basis. Fortunately, Cog Hive 7 was only around for a few years. It was destroyed by Darth Maul less than 5 years after it opened. Next up, we have the Imperial colony at Despair, which was essentially the Legends version of Narkina 5. Located in the Horrors system, Despair was a low-gravity jungle world home to numerous vicious species, and it was unpleasant even before it became one big labor camp. During the Imperial era, however, the planet was made into a penal colony, one of the most brutal in the Empire. Prisoners lived in crumbling shanty towns with such pleasant names as Dungeon Town and Slash Town, and they spent their lives doing back-breaking labor and being beaten by Imperial overseers. Everyone on Despair was legally enslaved and treated miserably, and the prison's overseers were allowed to do whatever they wanted to their charges, including ordering summary executions. Security at the Despair labor camps wasn't the greatest, but it also didn't need to be. Anyone who escaped the prisons was devoured by the wildlife. Escape from the planet itself was impossible due to the Imperial blockade in orbit. Despair was one of many planets like this, but it was arguably the worst one, a place where the Empire's undesirables were sent to be worked to death. Most of the inmates on Despair weren't even real criminals. They were Wookiees and Mon Calamari that had been enslaved after the Imperial subjugation of their homeworlds. During the Dark Times, conditions on Despair grew even worse when Grand Moff Tarkin moved construction of the Death Star to the planet's orbit. Security in the system was tightened, and summary executions of prisoners intensified to maintain control. The prisoners were put to work building the Death Star, and as they did, conditions on the planet worsened. The construction project eventually surrounded Despair with a dense field of debris, which rendered passage to and from the planet all but impassable, preventing all chance of escape. This left the prisoners on Despair trapped, when one day the Death Star was completed and Grand Moff Tarkin, believing that the workforce there had outlived its usefulness, ordered the super laser to be tested on Despera itself. The super laser was fired on a lower power setting, which destroyed Despera in 3 shots. The first shot ignited the planetary atmosphere and fractured its crust, killing all the prisoners and all other life on the planet. The second shot fractured Despera to its core, while the third turned it into a field of debris, utterly vaporizing all that remained of the prisoners there. Then, at the very top of the Hellish tier, we have the Narkina 5 prison. Built in the middle of an ocean on a moon of the gas giant Narkina, this nightmarish facility controlled prisoners through electrified floors, which could be used to stun, torture, or execute prisoners at the whim of the guards. The prison required very few staff, no more than 12 guards per floor, due to the efficiency of this control method. With the floors designed to keep them in line, the prisoners had little hope of resisting, and they could do little but spend their days slaving away in the prison factories, producing components to be used in the construction of the Death Star. As seen in Andor, one group of prisoners was able to escape Narkina 5 by overloading the floors by flooding part of the facility, then storming the control room. Due to the low numbers of guards, this escape attempt was successful, but the prison remained in operation and it was soon reopened with more guards and no chance of escape for the new batch of prisoners. Hellish was the only word for this place, but it still wasn't the worst prison in the Star Wars galaxy, as there were a few Imperial prisons and legends that went beyond Hellish. During the time of the Empire, one of the worst prisons in the galaxy was Star's End, a remote installation on the edge of the galaxy run by the Corporate Sector Authority. Located on the barren world Midas 7, Star's End was a state-of-the-art prison designed to be impregnable, inescapable, and secret. It was located outside of the corporate sector proper in wild space, but it was CSA run and received oversight and approval from the Empire. This prison was heavily defended, designed to resist any assault, and its prisoners stood no chance of escape because they were confined to stasis booths. Prisoners at Star's End would be put in stasis, reanimated only for interrogation, and the CSA would keep them like this forever. This wasn't just a life sentence, but a never-ending one, because in stasis, the prisoners wouldn't age, and so not even death was a possible means of escape. The corporate sector used Star's End to house all manner of undesirables, including political dissidents, revolutionaries, and anyone else that the corporate sector's rulers wanted to disappear. During the Dark Times, it was one of the most feared prisons in the galaxy, its name a whisper of fear in the criminal underworld and across the corporate sector. Fortunately, Star's End was destroyed by Han Solo in 2BBY, but it was rumored that the CSA had it rebuilt and put back into operation. While Star's End was technically an Imperial prison, the Empire had its own equivalents that it used to disappear dissidents and rebels to. The first of these was the Dathomir Imperial Prison, which, if you can believe it, was an Imperial prison on Dathomir. Dathomir had previously been used as a penal colony under the Republic, but the Republic had abandoned it after the descendants of a fallen Jedi imprisoned there became the Night Sisters and took over the planet. During the Dark Times, the Emperor ordered that a new prison be built on Dathomir to house political prisoners, conscientious objectors, and other enemies of the state that the Empire needed to disappear, but that were still too valuable to execute. This prison was originally just another penal colony, but not long after its construction was completed, the Empire brought in the Night Sisters to control the population via the dark side. The Night Sisters used their power to corrupt the minds of those imprisoned on Dathomir, turning them into mindless slaves, and they also started using these techniques to take control of the Imperial Guards as well. They attempted to seize control of the prison, but they were beaten back by loyal Imperial forces who bombarded the site from orbit to prevent the Night Sisters from taking Imperial ships and using them to escape the planet. Control via mind control was beyond hellish on its own, But the Dathomir prison was still outclassed by the most feared prison of all, Lusankya. Located on Coruscant, then known as Imperial Center, Lusankya was the brainchild of Director of Imperial Intelligence Ihsan Issad, who held political prisoners within the facility. The existence of the prison was secret, but words soon got out, telling tales of an inescapable prison deep in a forgotten mine below Galactic City. These tales were partly true. Lusankya was buried beneath Galactic City, but it wasn't a mine. It was actually a super star destroyer hidden within the cityscape. The Lusankya prison was built deep within the interior of the ship, and it was built upside down, using artificial gravity to make the ceilings into floors. The walls were built with stone and made to look like the facility was, as the rumors claimed, built in a mine. This was done so that, if any prisoners escaped, any attempt to climb up toward the surface would actually take them further down into the bowels of the ship, which was swarming with Issad's loyal troops. Those who entered Lusankya were doomed to never leave of their own free will. Within the prison, prisoners were interrogated and tortured, but once all usable information had been extracted from them, they were brainwashed. Issad had the detainees programmed as sleeper agents and then released, using them to wreak havoc on the enemies of the Empire from within. Although many were released, no one truly escaped Lusankya. The torture and conditioning detainees endured kept them locked up forever, converted into agents of the Empire's will. After the New Republic liberated Coruscant in 7 ABY, the Star Dreadnought Lusankya lifted off, killing millions and devastating a swath of Galactic City in the process. It was later captured by the New Republic, and its feared prison was dismantled. So, that's our look at the worst prisons of the Star Wars galaxy, from the tolerable to the most hellish. But what do you think? Would you like to see longer videos about any of these prisons? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.